Did you vaccinate your kids?
Jake, really briefly, I'll just say one other thing. Jake, just really briefly, one other thing. Again, this whole, Florida hasn't done any analysis, that's nonsense.
You said you hadn't done any projection.
We don't need to do. The way you're portraying it is nonsense. We don't need to do any projections. We handle outbreaks all the time. So there's nothing special that we would need to do. And secondly, again, there are countries that don't have vaccine mandates, and the sky isn't falling over there. So this notion, this thing that you're doing, that, and I'm not angry at you or anything for doing it.
Look at Jake's face. Look at Jake's face. He thought he was gonna own this guy because he had his data sheet ready, but didn't work, Jakey Jake. It's Sean Daniel here. If you enjoyed that intro, make sure you hit that like button because the Florida Surgeon General is going to break down bit by bit Jake Tapper's ridiculous argument and fear-mongering that he puts out as Florida has removed their vaccine mandates for kids going to school. Let's go.
But the continued use of vaccines did get a healthy boost from none other than President Trump, who seems to accept the overwhelming consensus of the medical community, which is that vaccines are safe and effective. Here is how President Trump responded to Florida's decision on Friday.
You have some vaccines that are so amazing. The polio vaccine, I happen to think, is amazing. A lot of people think that COVID is amazing. I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated. Look, you have vaccines that work. They just pure and simple work. They're not controversial at all. And I think those vaccines should be used. Otherwise, some people are going to catch it and they endanger other people. And when you don't have controversy at all, I think people should take it.
Joining us now is the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, Dr. Joseph Ladapo. Dr. Ladapo, thank you so much for joining us. You just heard President Trump say that if a state were to remove vaccine mandates, quote, that other people will catch it and they endanger other people, unquote. So obviously, you think that President Trump is wrong?
I'm not sure that I agree with you. Actually, I'm sure I don't agree with you in terms of what President Trump said. I want to clarify, first of all, and I haven't had a chance to speak with President Trump, but there's some confusion about what we said. We're not taking vaccines away from anyone. What we said was that if you want them, God bless you, you can have as many as you want. And if you don't want them, parents should have the ability and the power to decide what goes into their children's bodies. It's that simple. It's a position that I think respects the fact that it's much more important that parents be able to dictate the health of their children than anyone else, and anyone else includes the government or any other entity.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump had been specifically asked about the vaccine mandates in Florida, and he said, we have to be very careful. You have some vaccines that are so amazing. I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated. I mean, he's specifically saying that he's not sure that removing the vaccine mandate is a good idea. Those are his own words.
Well, I think, again, I think it's more nuanced, but for President Trump, first of all, I have tremendous respect for who he is. And, a lot of people have tried to really make life very difficult for him, and he's emerged and he's been a terrific leader and a terrific symbol for many, many Americans. Ultimately, this issue, first of all, my job is to take care of people in Florida. And my assessment is that, when you look at these things and the balance of, do parents have the ability, should parents have the ability to determine what goes into their children's bodies? Should parents have the ability to determine what goes into their own bodies versus, can a government authority or any other body decide what people can and cannot put in their bodies? Mm-hmm. I think that it's more important that parents, I think it's much more important that parents have the right and the ability to decide what enters their children's bodies. I think, in terms of President Trump, again, he obviously is entitled to any perspective that he wants. But in terms of my perspective, that's absolutely how I feel about it.
It's pretty clear that the Florida Surgeon General is not the greatest public speaker. He doesn't have the greatest experience public speaking, and you could see that in his initial announcement when he wiped out those vaccine mandates. He was so theatrical and just, it wasn't that natural, and you could see it even here. But what he's saying, even though it's not the greatest delivery, even though he doesn't seem like he's that captivating or that experienced being on camera in these situations, what's wrong with what he's saying? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'm sure Jake is going to attack that to no end, and we will see if, as Jake brings up, oh my God, there's so many more measles, is this guy sharp enough to bring up that, hey, maybe the measles outbreak has to do with all the illegal immigrants that have come across the southern border, which Senator Markwayne Mullin brought up in a previous video I did. Let's see.
So as you know, you are an outlier in terms of state attorneys general, state surgeon generals, and the medical community really disagrees with your position in general. Your predecessor, former Florida Surgeon General Scott Rivkees, criticized your plan. He warned that, quote, children in Florida will now be more at risk of vaccine-preventable illnesses than at any time in recent history. And he also says it's not just Florida children that you are putting at risk, but you're also putting at risk the entire broader U.S. population. What's your response to him?
Yeah, so Dr. Rivkees was my predecessor here at the Department of Health, and it's a great. There's a lot there, and I think first of all, it's important to remember that there are countries out there that don't have vaccine mandates for school. Sweden is an example of a country like that. The United Kingdom, I believe, is another example. I think Denmark also. And guys, the sky is not falling over there. So these pronouncements that everything's gonna, there're gonna be outbreaks everywhere and there are going to be all these problems. Well, we've heard that. Not only have we heard that before. I mean, how many times did so many people in the media and public health officials take positions like that during the COVID-19 pandemic, basically to get people's compliance with policies that were terrible policies, and there's broad recognition of that, including the media participated in that also. But you have some countries that don't mandate vaccines for their children. So the whole idea, I mean, do you not believe that parents are incapable of making decisions with the information that they receive from their pediatricians? Because either you don't believe that parents can make good decisions for their children, or the position just doesn't make sense. So I would say that, yeah, I trust parents. I believe parents can make good decisions for their children. They get good information. And Jake, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll add one more thing, which is this idea of informed consent. So you can't, you may have, I'm not sure if you have a legal background, but in medical ethics, you cannot obtain informed consent for a medical treatment if there's coercion. And a mandate is coercion, because a mandate indicates that if you don't comply, there's a punishment or some negative adverse effect.
Doc, I want to
that you cannot obtain informed consent, which means you cannot provide ethical practice. So the vaccine mandates absolutely positively should not be something that is part of our society.
Before we see what chart Jake Tapper wants to throw at this guy, now he's getting in the groove. Now that makes sense. And the framing of that about the informed consent and about not trusting parents to get good information from their own doctors, that is a heck of a PR angle to take. It's a logical angle, but I'm saying PR practice-wise, that will play out a lot better, because it's saying you trust the parents, and CNN and the liberals don't trust the parents. They don't trust the pediatricians to give the proper instructions and recommendations. That is a perfect way to frame it.
I'm looking at this report from your department from April, showing that more people in Florida are seeking religious exemptions for vaccines. And at the same time, Florida is seeing rising cases of hepatitis A and whooping cough and chickenpox. This is in your own report, your own department's report. Before you made this decision to try to lift vaccine mandates for Florida, which include obviously public schools, did your department do any data analysis? Did you do any data projection of how many new cases of these diseases there will be in Florida once you remove vaccine mandates?
Absolutely. So absolutely not, because it's not a, you mentioned whooping cough there. So there's this conflation of the science and sort of what is the right and wrong thing to do. So scientifically, you mentioned whooping cough. So that's an example. This is part of the issue with informed consent. That's an example of a vaccine that is ineffective. The data show that it's ineffective at preventing transmission. So sort of mandates with that really don't have anything to do with the notion of transmission. And then in terms of, like analysis, well, ultimately, this is an issue very clearly of parents' rights. So do I need to analyze whether it's appropriate for parents to be able to decide what goes into their children's bodies? I don't need to do an analysis on that.
So you're trying to lift the vaccine mandate in Florida, and your department and you did not even do a projection as to how this could impact public health. So you have not prepared hospitals in the Florida counties most at risk with the best treatments for any outbreaks of measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, polio, and you have not looked into how many kids might now get these preventable diseases? That's what you're saying?
No, that's what you said. What I'm saying is that it's an issue of right and wrong in terms of whether parents should be able to have ultimate authority over what happens to their kids' bodies. And in terms of outbreaks, we do have outbreaks in Florida, just like every state, and we manage those. So there are no new special procedures that need to be made.
Right, but you're talking about doing something that no other state has done.
We manage them just as always.
But you're talking about doing something that no other state in the United States has done and removing the vaccine mandate for public schools. You're making a decision that no other Surgeon General in the United States has done. It goes against what's recommended by every top medical organization, including the AMA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Boston Center on Emerging Infectious Diseases. It goes against what parents in Florida want. 82% of parents in Florida schools said public schools should require vaccines for measles and polio with health and religious exemptions. It goes against what Senator Rick Scott, a Republican from Florida, wants. He thinks sticking with a religious exemption is fine. It goes against the Florida Medical Association, which in the past has backed Governor DeSantis. So all of these people are wrong, and you are right.
Again, sort of casting it in that way is not what I would do. Is not how I look at it.
It's a fact.
You look at the last. I would say what I would say is that, my history, if you will, is I share what I believe is the right thing to do, whether it's popular or not. I've been doing it for years. I certainly did it during the COVID-19 pandemic. I thought that the lockdowns would be harmful. I said that as early as March 2020 after taking care of patients at UCLA Hospital, some of whom had COVID. We as a state and I as an individual recommended against the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines for children, healthy children, very early, 2 years ago or so. And that was the correct decision there. And I've made a series of just, and I'm not alone. It just so happens that most of the people who, have larger microphones tend to align with the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics. But we've been right over and over again, because what we've said has been based on data and common sense. In this particular area, this is really just about, it's really about ethics. I mean, is it appropriate for a government or any other entity to dictate to you what you should put in your body? No, it's absolutely not appropriate. You have sovereignty over your body. I mean, that's where it starts. And you should be able to decide what you put in your body. And if you can't decide what you put in your body, I mean, what do you actually, what can you decide? So it really is an issue that is in that domain.
Jake doesn't know what to do with that because he knew he had a great setup right there. He was shocked when the guy said, I didn't do any studies. No studies, it's just a form of ethics. Jake was like, oh my God, you're admitting this on my program? Did you see his face? But then what did he try to do? Fearmonger that you're going to have all these outbreaks, all these problems because you're doing what no one else will do. Jake, what if there was a perfect example where Florida, the exact state you're talking about, has done this exact thing? They've broken away from the norm. They lifted mandates. And there was fear-mongering from everybody that there's going to be tons of outbreaks. What if you could study that exact example, an exact same situation, to see how it played out? Oh, wait, you can. It's called COVID-19, Jake, where Florida lifted mandates. They didn't make you stay inside. They didn't close beaches. Everybody was having a grand old time. And if they got COVID, they got the antibodies, they got over it. Bing, bada boom, bada bam. And people had good mental health. They were able to go outside, live their life, make their own freedom of choice, whether to do the social distancing, whether to stay inside. Unlike places like New York, where people were miserable, cases skyrocketed because their immune systems were possibly weakened because they were inside, not living healthy lifestyles, not happy. Wow, Jake, what if there was an exact example of this exact situation with Florida? Ha, there was, and it was COVID, and it worked out great. I was in Florida during COVID. It was awesome. People were living normal lives. You had freedom of choice as an American.
I have to say,
it's very simple.
I'm kind of shocked that you have not done any sort of like projection or data analysis of what this is actually going to literally mean for
Sure.
kids in Florida. But let me just close by saying, I know a veteran of the war in Iraq. He's a big Trump supporter. He's a big MAGA guy. He has a kid who is immunocompromised, who cannot get vaccinated. It does not have a strong enough body to take an immunization. He is relying on the kids in his class to be vaccinated so he doesn't get those diseases. That's what President Trump was referring to in his comments. What is your message to the parents of immunocompromised kids who are relying on most kids being vaccinated so their kids are safe? You talk about liberty and freedom for parents, but it seems like you're removing liberty and freedom for the parents of kids who are immunocompromised.
What?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way to conceive that, to sort of describe that, but I don't think that's the dynamic at all. You know, ultimately, obviously, you know, we're all very sympathetic to children and families who have to deal with chronic illnesses. And, you know, I'm a parent. It's, you know, we care about our kids more than anything. At the same time, it's important to recognize, you know, just the difference between right and wrong. And ultimately, however, you know, whatever the challenges are, and by the way, the challenges for being immunocompromised, I mean, they're really significant, and they extend way beyond just the diseases that we have vaccines for. By the way, not all of which actually prevent or are effective at preventing transmission. But even just beyond that, the issue of whether a parent, you know, should be able to decide what goes into their child's body. I mean, that's an immutable issue. And, you know, it doesn't matter if it's an emergency, as we saw during the COVID pandemic, or other issues. So that's an issue. And parents have every ability, right? We're not taking vaccines away. They have the ability to consider those things when they make decisions about their child. But their ability to consider those things cannot be usurped by someone else. They are the ultimate arbiters of what happens with their children. That's how it should be. And that's why my position will never change, because that will always be true. It will always be true that parents should be able to decide what goes into their kids' bodies. I mean, it's not complex at all.
Did you vaccinate
And
your kids?
just,
Are your
Jake,
kids
really briefly,
vaccinated?
I'll just say one other thing. Jake, just really briefly, one other thing. Again, this whole, Florida hasn't done any analysis, that's nonsense.
You said you hadn't done any
outbreaks.
projection.
We don't need to do. The way you're portraying it is nonsense. We don't need to do any projections. We handle outbreaks all the time. So there's nothing special that we would need to do. And secondly, again, there are countries that don't have vaccine mandates, and the sky isn't falling over there. So this notion, this thing that you're doing, that, you know, and I'm not angry at you or anything for doing it, but the thing that you're doing is a pattern that we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Boom.
You know, oh my gosh, if people don't wear masks, oh my gosh, if people don't take the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. It's a terrible strategy. The right position is that parents should control, absolutely. They should be the final say on what happens in terms of any vaccines that they choose to take or not take. It's very simple.
All right, Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo, thank you so much for your time, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
He did good. He did really, really good. He got in a groove. He started to make his points. He was a little nervous at the beginning, which I do not blame him at all. You're on a major show, CNN. It's amazing how much of a push there is by CNN, which represents mostly U.S. news, to try to push the United States to become more like Europe, to become more socialist with more control, more mandates. It's like they should just move their network to focusing on that type of stuff. Which is ironic then, because Dr. Joseph Ladapo brought up how Denmark and some other Nordic country doesn't have vaccine mandates, even though over there they had crazy COVID mandates in Europe. But it's weird how CNN always does this push to really take away freedoms in America. They want more control because they're just a branch of the Democrat Party. But man, after hearing that, how many of you guys want to move to Florida? I mean, I like the notion of that. It makes a lot of sense. People should have the liberty, what is the United States is about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We should have the liberty to choose what we put in our body, which Florida was the main leader of during COVID. And now they're starting this whole thing with vaccine mandates. Who knows who else will follow? Because I know they were one of the leaders of not having mandates during COVID. Maybe people will follow them like they did during COVID times. And let's see. I think he did a great job. It's Sean Daniel here. If you enjoyed that Jake Tapper takedown, check out another one right here where Tom Holman on today's Sunday show dismantles Jake Tapper once again. And I'll see you there.